how's it going everyone? Welcome to Asian Filmist. My name is Ray and I love movies. And the movie we'll be talking about today is a 2017 Hollywood adaptation of Death Note, the ever so popular manga and anime. This movie, which most of you have probably already seen on Netflix, is brought to us by Adam Wingard. And it essentially takes the original Japanese story and transplants it into America. And you know, going into this live action adaptation of Death Note, the only bit of the original source that I've seen are the live action movies. You got the two original Death Note movies, the L spin-off, and also the sequel, Death Note Light Up the New World. And for the most part, I thought they were enjoyable, save for the L movie, but that's another story. But I thought for the most part, the Death Note movies were enjoyable in their own right. But then here we go with another Hollywood adaptation. And so the story of Death Note, it's pretty much the same as the original anime. It's about this high school student named Light Turner who receives this magical notebook from the sky called the Death Note. He receives this Death Note from a death god named Ryuk, who is voiced by the awesome Willem Dafoe, and he's given the godlike power of controlling the death of anyone who chooses, so long as he can know the face of the person and write their full real name inside the Death Note. And so Light and his girlfriend Mia start picking off all the folks that they deem guilty enough to die. These could be criminals, bullies, and what have you. And their exploits catch the attention of the police force and also L, who happens to be one of the world's brightest detectives. And so it turns into this cat and mouse game where L is trying to figure out who is Light and imprison him for his misdeeds. And so essentially on the surface is the main story. And you know, I could go on and on how different the Netflix adaptation is from the original source, but I'm not going to judge this movie based on how well it adapts the source material. Instead, I'm just going to go in and just talk about the movie for what it is, a standalone adaptation. And I'll save a little bit of what I think about how well this version adapts the original source material after the main review. But for now, let's dive into the things I liked about Death Note. And you know, to be honest, there weren't that many things I enjoyed about Death Note. I mean, I thought the guy who played L was pretty cool. He brought a different L to the table, but you know, I think for the most part, he did an alright job given what he had to work with. And there were little bits and pieces of the original L in this performance. If you've seen the live action Death Note adaptations from Japan and you saw Matsuyama Kenichi's performance, and I think that performance is iconic for L. But you know, you see this dude's performance, you know, he tries to emulate it somewhat, but he adds his own flavor a little bit. But I think overall the guy who played L's performance was the best performance out of the whole entire movie, save for the voice work of Willem Dafoe. Like, I think the casting of Willem Dafoe in the role of Ryuk was just perfect. I mean, he plays a really excellent villain, and he has that very sinister voice that matches really well to Ryuk's character. I also like the atmosphere set by the colors and a lot of the music. The music is another kind of thing to talk about, but the non-licensed music that was featured in this movie, I thought it helped really create the atmosphere very well. And the way they kept Ryuk hidden in the shadows for most of the time, his face was for the most part really distorted by shadows, and you really couldn't see what he looked like. I mean, if you know what he looks like in the original anime, then there's no surprise to you. But for those who are going into Death Note kind of blind and they see Ryuk hidden in the shadows, it's kind of freaky, I think. And what else did I like? I think a lot of the deaths were just funny and entertaining. Granted, I'm pretty sure that wasn't the film's main intention with showing all these violent and bloody and shocking deaths, but a lot of these just kind of came out of left field, like, whoa, so it went there. And a lot of times it was just really funny. I don't know. I think this movie at many points in the story was an accidental comedy. I mean, we'll get to more of that and the things I thought were bad about the movie. You know, let's just go ahead and dive into that. First of all, what is up with Light's screeching? I mean, he kind of screamed like a little girl. It kind of came out of left field and really broke the mood of the scene that every scene that it happened. I mean, you take a look at Light and he's trying to be like this cool and calm figure, that all of a sudden you hear him screech. It's kind of like, was that really necessary? But you know, it was funny, but of course not in the good way. It was kind of more of like you just kind of face palm and laugh, like, really? Yeah. And about the music, I don't know if the music pieces they selected to accompany the story were the best choices, but they made it funny. I mean, if you're really into 80s rock music, I don't really think it has a place with this film, but whatever. Another thing I didn't like is that most of the story, when it came to describing the relationship between Mia and Light, was really rushed. Like when Light and Mia hooked up eventually in the movie, it happens earlier on. You didn't feel like it was well deserved. It just kind of happened just for the convenience of the story. I mean, there were many other plot points in the story that felt rushed. Even the way Elle figured out that Light was Kira the whole time, it would have been a lot more interesting if you saw Elle's thought process and you saw more of the way he was putting two and two together and eventually figuring out that Kira was Light. Another thing I didn't like, going back to Elle's character, as I said, I thought that his performance was the best among all the actors in the movie. However, the way they kind of made Elle, you're introduced to him as this brilliant detective, kind of calm and kind of calculating. However, partway through the story, he starts to lose his cool and he pulls out a gun on Light, and I thought that was pretty out of character. I mean, the whole point of Elle's story is he tries to catch Light using his mind and using the law. However, he kind of turns that around and starts breaking it, and it felt really out of character. And overall, I thought Light's character was just a complete dumbass. I mean, he's made to also be this clever, this kind of equal to Elle's intelligence. However, the film doesn't really explore that. They just kind of made him this high school student who always get the shit end of the stick, and you don't know really why the Death Note came to him. They don't really explain as to why he was chosen by Ryuk. And while the world is hunting for Kira, Light doesn't really do much to hide the existence of the Death Note. He kind of just says it and shows it to Mia, who, yeah, here, check this out. Do you know what this is? This is a Death Note. There was also this rule in the Death Note. I remember in the original anime, there were only like 3 or 4 rules or something. You guys can correct me on the actual number. But in this version, there is like 100 different rules that the Death Note user would have to follow. And one of them was, if you write down a name on a page, but you burn the page before the time of death happens, you can spare that person from dying. And so needless to say, Light's name gets written inside the Death Note, and he kind of panics and tries to make a deal with the person who writes his name down. The whole time I was thinking, why couldn't Light just take the page and burn it himself? That would have saved a whole lot of trouble. But I don't know. This movie is just all over the place. A lot, yeah. And overall, it was just kind of boring. Not many of the characters had charisma. You didn't really feel invested into either Elle or Light. Like, there was this whole angle with, what would you do if you had the Death Note? And with Light having that power, he didn't really do much to make you get behind him. They just kind of like said it, but they didn't really make you feel it. And even with Elle, you wanted him to catch Light, but you wanted him to catch him not by shoving a gun into his face. You wanted him to use his brilliant mind and have him catch him using that. I mean, overall, it's just kind of a boring movie. I mean, when you compare it to the original anime, there were a lot of themes that were just skimmed over. Like, what I really appreciate in the original story, it really explored the gray areas of morality and is Light justified in the way in what he's doing. But then they kind of don't really explore that in the Hollywood version. It just made it more like a popcorn blockbuster, if you will. It's not really even a blockbuster, but comparatively speaking, that's how it felt like. And in the original story, there were a lot of moments of cool cat and mouse mind games that were really engrossing and really gripping, but you don't get any of that in the Hollywood version. And in the end, it felt like Death Note was trying to capitalize on the YA fan base. That's essentially what it became in the end. But amongst all the grievances I have with Death Note, the one thing I will not hold against it is the casting of Western actors in these roles. Because I mean, if you take Asian actors and transplant them into the story, it still would have been a bad movie. I mean, a bad movie is a bad movie. And in the end, it's an adaptation. It's a story that's transplanted into America. Whatever. It just, it wouldn't have made a difference if it cast Asian actors. It still would have been not so good movie. Do I recommend this movie? Maybe not. I mean, no one's day will be ruined if they skipped out on watching Death Note. If you're gonna watch a Death Note live action adaptation, I definitely recommend checking out the original 2 Death Note adaptations from Japan. The ones starring Fujiwara Tatsuya and Matsuyama Keiichi. Those were fun. And so yeah, those are my thoughts on the Netflix adaptation of Death Note. What did you guys think? Whatever your thoughts are, leave a comment below. And if you want to talk more movies with me on Twitter, you can catch me at RayMaru555. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching. And if you liked what you watched, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you can join in with more discussions on Asian films. Take it easy, guys. See you guys next time.
獲物は確かにいただいたぜ。